Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's bit of preview days while we get to talk about financing the MS-Ed programs. So while we go through this, for this financial aid overview, we're going to talk a little bit about just tuition and understanding the way tuition works at Northwestern. And then we're going to dive into the various ways to finance it, whether that's talking about loans, whether that's talking about aid and awards that are available in the through the MS-Ed program itself or elsewhere in the university or outside the university. My name is Brad Waddle. I'm the assistant director of the program. I'm also an alum of the program. So I told you the goals before I moved to the goals, slide. So yes, we'll start with the how tuition works, graduate financial aid, student loans, everything that's organized directly through the MS-Ed office, other things at Northwestern, jobs. When thinking about why to become a Wildcat educator, these are the types of things we talked about in our intro session for preview days. Hopefully for those of you who have gotten a chance to visit some of our classes, you've seen a little bit of this in the classes, but we do have a very strong focus on equity and social justice, very experienced faculty and staff. Many of our faculty are also adjunct instructors. They're teachers in area schools around Chicago or just outside of Chicago. And thank you everybody for jumping in with your introductions in the chat. We are going to have ESL and bilingual classwork options available, very individualized advising, one of the benefits of being a small program. Clinical experiences work hand in hand with our classes. We do a lot with action research, which is the type of research where basically you are researching in the field. You are using your own experience, whether that's in the classroom or an educational setting. It doesn't have to be schools, to gather data for a research question of your own interest. We do a lot of job support, and of course, alumni stay very much engaged in the program. Now, for the tuition rate, the tuition rates for 2023-24 have not been published yet. We don't know what they are yet, so we're telling you what the tuition rate currently is, which is just shy of $4,000 per course unit. Now, that usually goes up between 2 and 4% each year. Hopefully, we're going to be on the low side of that. We're aiming for 2% or less than that if possible. As soon as it's available, we will let you know. Elementary and secondary teaching start at a base of 15 units. Most courses are 1 unit. We're on quarters, so 1 unit comes out to 2 2/3 semester hours. That's very awkward math. So we just say a course is a unit. Elementary and secondary teaching start with a base of 15 units, where educational studies and learning sciences have a base of 12 units. So because of that, the total tuition for elementary and secondary teaching is higher, $59,000 and change as compared to $47,000 and change. Now, because we charge tuition by the course unit, what that means is if you're in the program for more than a year, that doesn't increase your tuition. All it does is spread it out. It's the same dollar amount spread over a greater amount of time. So you're not going to have to worry about that as a yearly cost. That is the total cost. Now, elementary and secondary teaching candidates, for ed studies and learning sciences, it's easy. You've got the 12 units, 47,000, that's it. For elementary and secondary teaching candidates, with your admit letter, you should have a content area licensure review sheet that will let you know how well your undergraduate background matches with what you want to teach. You might need extra courses. I was an undergraduate theater major who became a German teacher. So I'm someone who needed extra classes in order to qualify for my teaching license. Those extra classes go above and beyond the base of 15 units for the degree, which means extra tuition charges. So that is something to just be aware of. Now, some of that content area coursework can be taken as a degree elective, so it doesn't actually increase the 15, or be taken outside of Northwestern to, again, keep that tuition burden down. So when you do take a class or want to take a class at another institution, you should always check in with us so that our licensure manager and your advisor can take a look and make sure that the class is in fact going to count. It only saves you tuition if it's a class that's actually going to count. If it doesn't meet the standards that we're looking for, or rather what I should say is that the Illinois State Board of Education is looking for, then all you're doing is paying for a class that doesn't count. So you want to definitely check it with us, but as long as we look at it and our licensure manager says, hey, this is great, then you can take it off campus. It is important to note that if you are getting federal student loans, that is only available for classes taken at places where you're getting a degree. So what that would basically mean is if you're at Northwestern, it would only be for the Northwestern classes. And thank you very much for joining from over in London. That's maybe a more interesting place to be than Texas right now. I don't want to judge, but hopefully you're enjoying it out there. A little bit rainy in this part of the country here in the States. North of here is actually getting hit with quite a bit of snow, but we're in the rainy part of it. This entire slide, by the way, only applies to elementary and secondary teaching. Educational studies and learning sciences, don't worry about it. With your acceptance letter, you received a sheet that's pretty similar to this. This is just a quick way that you can fill in the numbers and do the math for yourself to figure out where you're going to be. And remember that elementary and secondary in that first box start at 15 units. Educational studies and learning sciences are at 12. And educational studies and learning sciences aren't going to have any extra licensure courses at all. Now, these are just tuition rates. There's also books. Now, book costs tend not to be too high because there's a lot of online materials that people have, articles, things like that, where you don't have to buy a full book. But there are some books. Transportation, licensure tests and fees. These are all things that are not included with tuition. When you are doing for elementary and secondary teachers, when you're doing your clinical experiences, your practicum and student teaching quarters, you must be in your school site for a full day. During practicum, that's going to be 2 days a week. During student teaching, that's going to be 5 days a week. The reason why I mention that is if anybody's considering working while going through the program, you need to have the flexibility if you're elementary or secondary teaching to accommodate your practicum and student teaching. Now, if you're doing the program over 2 years, that first year, you don't have to worry about practicum and student teaching. It's the second year. Like I said, tuition usually is in that 2 to 4% increase per academic year. We will update that as soon as we have it. So that's just understanding the way tuition works at Northwestern. Now, how can we help pay for it? I want to mention loans to start with, just because it's important to know, and remember that federal student loans are only going to be for U.S. citizens enrolled half-time or more. You can, in fact, most students coming into the program can, in fact, take out enough in federal student loans to cover the full cost of attendance, which is tuition plus cost of living, adjusted downward if we've offered you any fellowships. Now, obviously, most people are not going to want to go that far into debt. And we encourage you to minimize the amount that you have to take out in loans. But it's important to note that you can take out enough in loans to cover the full cost. Loan amounts can be adjusted quarter to quarter. So that first, if you apply for federal loans, they're going to tell you how much you can get. They're going to tell you the maximum amount you can get. You can take a smaller number than what they offer you. And if you're worried, well, what if I take too small a number and I realize I need more? You can adjust your loan amounts quarter to quarter. So if you start, it's like you realize, you know what, I took out too little, you can take more the next quarter. Or if you realize, actually, I was too aggressive, I took out more than I need, you can reduce that amount quarter to quarter. There is a link here, and we're going to make these slides available to everybody. to Northwestern's Graduate Financial Aid Office, where you can understand more of the nitty-gritty about the way loans work and paying them back, that type of thing. Now, awards that aren't loans. Fellowships and scholarships are far better than loans because you don't have to pay them back. We do have a limited number of fellowships in our program, and we start making our initial award decisions in February. Decisions are made on an ongoing basis. We'll keep making financial aid offers as long as we still have money available to offer to people. So it starts in February. It actually has already started. We've made some award offers already. It usually continues, into probably March, April, even May before we've given out all of the awards that we have. If you have expressed interest in a graduate assistant position in your application, you're absolutely going to be considered. We've made some initial fellowship offers. We have not yet made any graduate assistant offers. When we're looking at those GA positions, we're looking at people because they're going to be working in our office 12 to 15 hours a week. We pay for one class, and you also get an $800 monthly stipend on top of that. So we are looking for someone who's going to be a helpful presence in the office, someone who has the types of work experience that will be useful to us, can work independently, that type of thing, work well with our office team, and really interested in our program and the guiding commitments that we stand for. Now, those are just the offers within the MS-Ed program. However, there are scholarships and grants and fellowships. Some people say scholarship, some people say fellowship, but it basically is the same thing. And there are awards available elsewhere at Northwestern, but also outside Northwestern. And so the Northwestern Office of Fellowship, and again, these are all live links. And so when we share the slides, you're going to be able to just click on any of these to get more information. The Northwestern Office of Fellowships lists a whole bunch of fellowships available at Northwestern. We've got a couple of databases here. There's one that's been compiled by Northwestern itself. That's this first one, the other awards databases. And then there's one on fellowship, scholarships, and grants that our staff has put together. We encourage you to look through everything. I know that there are things like for STEM teachers, science, technology, engineering, and math. There's something called the Knowles Fellowship, which is something we've had a lot of success with getting MS-Ed students to win a Knowles Fellowship several years in a row. And that's great if you happen to be in those fields. There is a James Madison Fellowship for people who are in social sciences. So that's a great one to look for. These are ones that we know that students have gotten in the past. And so you're going to find information about those on this fellowship, scholarships, and grants page. We also always recommend that people check out professional organization pages, professional education organizations, professional teacher organizations, like and now I'm forgetting all of the acronyms, but the NCTE for English teachers, or NCTM for math teachers, or I know AATG and AATF are German and French teachers. AATS might be Spanish teachers. There are professional organizations for every type of teacher out there, and they have lists of programs where you can help finance graduate study and education. So these are all things that we very strongly recommend that people look at. And then there are jobs. You can work on the Northwestern campus, either as a graduate assistant in a certain department or in a part-time employee type of situation. We've had people work with the One Book, One Northwestern program, with the Distinguished Secondary Teacher Award, Academic Support and Learning Advancement. So ASLA is helping an organization that helps students who are enrolled at Northwestern. The DSTA, that Distinguished Secondary Teacher Award, every year at graduation, we award some people who were high school teachers of people who are about to walk across the stage and graduate. And the Distinguished Secondary Teacher Award, they have a staff that goes and reviews all of the nominees and does interviews and that type of thing. And we've had people work with that program. So there are definitely things at Northwestern that we know people have done specifically. You can also contact any particular Northwestern department or program or lab, the math department or psychology department, something like that. The math department, I know for a fact, needs a ton of TAs for their various classes. And so we've had our students become TAs in those classes. A lot of times, a department wants to offer TA positions first to their own graduate students, rather than the graduate students in education. But when a department needs a lot of TAs, more TAs than they have available grad students, then they love taking our grad students to help fill in the gap. And I know math is one such department. You can always check with other departments. And this is true whether you are trying to do elementary and secondary teaching or ed studies and learning sciences, because if you've got the right background for it, you can potentially become a TA for an undergraduate class, or a research assistant in a big research project that's going on. I know we had a student work with one of our CESP faculty who is doing a lot of sleep studies, and she was working in what gets to be known as the spit lab, because she was measuring chemical levels in saliva based on sleep patterns and things like that. I don't know the full amount of the research, but I know it involved sleep and I know it involved spit. And so it was called the Spit Lab. And we've had MS-Ed students who have worked in that lab with that particular faculty member. There's also work that you can get off campus. For anybody who is interested in actually getting a teaching license and becoming an elementary or middle school or secondary teacher, we recommend applying for a substitute teaching license, which, as long as you've got your bachelor's degree, you can qualify for a substitute teaching license. And that gets you extra experience in schools. It's not the same as student teaching. Subbing is not the same as teaching, but it still gets you in schools, it still gets you in classrooms, and it gets you a paycheck. These are all good things. There are a couple of different types of substitute teachers in Chicago public schools. I know CPS, they have a standard subpool that you can just apply to be in. They also have something that they refer to as a cadre sub. The cadre subs actually are guaranteed a certain amount of work each week. And because of that, they're able to get benefits while they are subbing. Whereas if you're just in the regular sub pool, there's not a guarantee of how much work you'll get. Maybe you'll get a bunch, maybe you won't, maybe you'll only get a little bit. But these are definitely things to look at. So we definitely recommend, if you're going to look at subbing, Chicago Public Schools is great. We're right here. You also might want to look at Evanston Township High School or District 65, which is the K-8 school district in Evanston. There are, of course, also tutoring and nannying positions, which a lot of our students are interested in. Not all, of course, but many are. And we also do, because we get job offers, part-time job offers throughout the year, we maintain an opt-in jobs listserv that we'll post for you. That one's going to be an opt-in listserv because we know that not everybody is looking for jobs. Not everybody wants to hear every single part-time job that becomes available. But we also know there are others who are looking for jobs and are looking for every single part-time thing that they can find. And so we do maintain that opt-in listserv for people. We don't recommend having a full-time job while going through the program. That's going to be very, very difficult. Graduate coursework is intense, but part-time jobs, especially part-time jobs that have some flexibility, are great. So that's me just throwing a bunch of information at you. The next session that we've got scheduled is a class observation tonight with Tim Dorr, the curriculum leadership class. I believe the number for that is 437, but that is at 6 o'clock tonight. If you've got questions, please throw them in the chat, or if you feel comfortable taking yourself off mute and just asking me, that works too. And I'm happy to dive into any of these particular websites if you want to look at things or answer whatever questions you have. And again, just thank you very much for joining us. So I would say, so for that first question, if you haven't applied for financial aid in the application form, so there are a couple of different types of things. If you're applying for federal loans, that actually you don't do on our application form itself. You're going to have to file a FAFSA, and you're going to have to go through the Graduate Financial Aid Office, and absolutely you can still do that. I do want to say just a quick point about the FAFSA. One of the F's in FAFSA stands for free. You do not have to spend any money to file a FAFSA. That said, there are organizations out on the web that you will find that are more than happy to take money from you to do a FAFSA for you. I just want to make sure you know you do not have to pay money to do the FAFSA. One of the F's is for free. And if you are using a service that's asking you for money, just be aware that you are paying to have someone do something for you that you could do yourself for free. If that's what you want to do, great. We just don't want you to be tricked into doing that. In terms of the MS-Ed awards, if you did not mark that you were interested in MS-Ed awards, whether that's grad assistant positions or fellowships, or you're just not 100% sure. I think I marked that, but I'm not sure. I really am interested. Can you please double check? You can absolutely send me an email message, and I will check for you and make sure that you have in fact marked your interest in awards. And if you haven't, then I can change that for you. You've already submitted your application, so you can't make the changes, but I can. So please, if you didn't ask for financial aid or awards, or you're just not sure if you have and want to make sure you did, shoot me an email at that ms@apply@northwestern.edu, and I will make sure that you are marked appropriately so that if you're interested in awards, we will consider you for awards. Do most students in the program live on campus or off campus? I would say most live off campus. However, there is on-campus graduate student housing, and every year we do have a handful of students who take advantage of that. One of the larger on-campus housing, I'm going to say dorm, I'm not sure dorm is necessarily the right word, is Engelhart Hall, which is very, very close to downtown Evanston. It's probably a 10 or 15-minute walk from campus. That's where the people who live on campus, most of them live there. There are a couple of other on-campus graduate housing situations. There's McManus. There's one actually right across the street from the MS-Ed program, but I forget the name of it. One thing I will say about living on campus, if you are moving from a different area of the country to Chicago, living on campus can make the process a little bit easier because you don't have to, do apartment hunting and familiarize yourself with neighborhoods and things like that. You would probably, if you did a really intensive apartment search, be able to find an apartment with a lower rent than what you're going to find on on-campus housing. That said, if you go with on-campus housing, you're going to have a very good and very responsible landlord. I remember there was a case where one of our students was living in Engelhart Hall, and there was a problem where she went out of town for the weekend, and for whatever reason, her refrigerator broke down and stopped working, and a bunch of food got spoiled in the refrigerator because she was gone for several days. And not only did the university quickly buy a new refrigerator for her, they also stocked it. which she was absolutely stunned that they did it, which is why she told me this story, because she's like, I can't believe they did this for me. So, so yes, do be aware that if you want to do the apartment search, you're going to be able to find an apartment with a lower rent than on-campus housing. But if you do go with the on-campus housing option, which is a little easier if you're not from the Chicago area or not familiar with Chicago, you're going to get a great landlord. If you do decide that you want to look for an apartment off campus, I would recommend getting one that is close to the Evanston and Chicago L system, the CTA system. Chicago Transit Authority. If you stay close to the red and purple lines, all of the train lines are color-coded. If you stay close to the red and purple lines, that's going to give you the easiest commute up to campus. For tuition, no, you make quarterly payments per unit. So you do not pay all the tuition at once. You pay per class as you take the classes. And so what that means is if in fall quarter you pay, you're taking 3 classes, we'll call tuition roughly $4,000. So if you're taking 3 classes in fall, that means in fall you're going to pay $12,000. If you're taking only 2 classes in winter, then in winter, you're only paying $8,000. So you're paying for the classes as you take them. And the university does have payment plans as well, if you want to spread out those payments across the quarter. Yes, thank you for your questions. And I know, and of course, if you've got to go, you've got to go. That's great. I don't want to hold you here. If you do have extra questions, I'm not leaving yet. Please fire them away. I'll keep answering questions for you. If you think of questions after the session, please email me at that ms@apply@northwestern.edu email address. Obviously, we very much hope that everybody winds up coming to Northwestern and joining us as a student. We think we've got a great program. We think we've got a great community. We would love to see you here. And we want to make sure that you have the best information you can possibly have so that you can make an informed decision. Grad school is a big deal, and we really love to have you here, but we don't want anybody to make a decision in the dark. We want you to understand what it is that that you're trying to make a decision about.